When we share the world with another person, it's really important to make sure we maintain that communication and build those frameworks and guidelines with each other. The same way those kind of frameworks work in the workplace, it can also be applied to our relationships. A building block of any relationship is that you have the structure in place and the trust to be able to talk about some of those key issues in a safe and healthy manner. The best kind of communication happens when you can put yourself in an environment, forum, where you can be open and honest and curious and get to solution. Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to start with a question. What boat do newlywed couples like to take their honeymoons on? The relationship. That was, I'm bringing the gold today, guys. But no, I wanted to talk today a little bit about relationships and specifically relationships we have with our significant others and how we can make them better. You know, my relationship with my wife is amazing. We have a really, really strong communication right now, and we're 20 years into marriage, 25 years into our relationship. We've been together for 25 years. And as I celebrated this week, I reflected on some of the wins and growth that we've had over the last 25 years. And certainly, we've been through some really challenging times together throughout the course of that 25-year journey. She was with me amidst my alcoholism, and she was there for me throughout that, and the sobriety and the recovery and everything, and even raising our kids. And we did a whole episode on our relationship and how she can put up with me. We did an episode on that a few months ago. So you can go back and actually listen to that and listen to a little history on that. But what I wanted to share today, I wanted to talk a little bit about how some of the things that we've implemented in the past couple of years that have really worked for us to make our relationship stronger. Not just our relationship, but also to build on the communication, make us more organized, and help us to build ourselves into that power couple that could, not just be in love with each other, but also build ourselves and build our careers and our livelihoods around our passions and where we want to go. It's important. I talk a lot. I've talked in the past about the importance of goal setting and how we do that, how we set goals for ourselves. And I even have the Vision Reflection Retreat guidelines that you can download on my website. If you go to that, if you go to my website and you download that, you can find a Vision Reflection Retreat where you can set up your own vision and reflect on your wins for the previous quarter. But that's really being internal, looking at yourself and what you want. And while that's important, when we share the world with another person, when we share our lives with another person, it's really important to make sure we maintain that communication and build those frameworks and guidelines with each other as well. So just as it's important to get away quarterly or weekly or yearly to look at your goals and reflect on them and make sure you're setting your goals appropriately, it's important to do that with your significant other as well, around areas of your relationship that you might need to improve upon. So I'll ask you that question. Are you taking the time with your significant other to plan, to dream, to build those goals out? Are you taking the time to lean into some healthy conflict, not unhealthy conflict? I think we all do that pretty well, right? Passive aggression, anyone, or little knife stabs or anything like that. I know I'm guilty of those kinds of things. And we often say things we regret. But are you deliberately taking the time to bring up the core issues in your relationship and get at them with a good critical eye and put in some good healthy conflict in the same way that you would with a business relationship? Now, I'm going to disclaim right now that I am not a marriage and family therapist, so this is not therapy advice. And if you're really struggling with your marriage or with your relationships, I would encourage you to seek out some professional help that might help you. But from this context, this is just sharing some information that has helped my wife and I to really improve the quality of our relationship. Um, and so, one of the really great things that we've implemented is a weekly meeting that where we come together and bring to the table all that's happened that week and start addressing and talking about some of the issues that we have that we want to solve. This is very similar to what's called a level 10 meeting in the entrepreneurial organization system. And the EOS, what that's short for, EOS was is something that we implemented in our business, in the family business, a couple of years ago, and it was one of the best things that we've done. I mean, we've we've really improved substantially since we've implemented this program, EOS. Part of that EOS program is a series of goal setting and weekly meetings and quarterly meetings and structure around that so that we can get to the important issues that will move our company forward. And I thought it would be valuable, especially when you're not just in a relationship with your spouse or your significant other, but you're also running something of a family business with them, right? I mean, you have to manage finances. You have HR, human resources, where you have to run the lives of your kids or other family members, or equally just yourselves. You have to cohabitate and co-work with this other person and make sure that their needs are met and make sure that they're happy, right? So it's not dissimilar from a business. And I know that may sound cold, and I get that it is. There's other added elements to that that play in, including love and sex and other areas of life that aren't included in the workplace. But there are overlaps, and I think the same way those kind of frameworks work in the workplace, they can also be applied to our relationships. And again, this is something that's worked really well from us. So for my wife and I, so I would just encourage you to test it, use the scientific method. What works for you works for you. And I just want to share from our experience what has worked for us. So we looked at actually some of the EOS program and implemented EOS in our relationship essentially. If you're unfamiliar with EOS, I would recommend a good starting point is to read the book Traction. It's a book by Gino Wickman, and it describes the entire EOS framework from soup to nuts. So you can look at how they set goals, how they establish their meetings, and all sorts of great things from that book. Um, and then you can apply or adapt that framework around the relationship so that you can build on it. And so recently my wife and I started implementing some of this meeting structure for ourselves. And over the last year or so, we've been conducting weekly level 10 meetings. And those level 10 meetings include a variety of components. Now in EOS, it describes that as a part where a segue part where you share your good news. You share good news from the business standpoint and from a personal standpoint. And then you get into your scorecard. You go over, some of what the metrics that you've used in your business and the results and the KPIs, the key performance indicators that are in your business. And then you move on from scorecard to the to-do list, the to-dos that you had to do that previous week. Did you get them all done? And the highlights. What highlights from the previous week did you have? And then you get into a discussion on the core issues that you're dealing with in your business. And that's primarily the structure of a level 10 meeting. It's called level 10 because you want to rate it towards the end and between 1 and 10. And the closer you get to 10, the more important and impactful that meeting actually was. And so we adapted this framework into our relationships. So on a weekly basis, we actually have had these meetings where we first start with sharing our good news. And then we get into our scorecard. What are our relationship KPIs that we want to look at? Are we connecting as many times a week as we need to? Or are we having intimate time as much as we would like to? Those kind of KPIs are what we like to look at. And that sets a baseline for a good discussion later on what we might want to talk about. And then we get into the highlights for our week. What went really well that week that we want to share about, or what are some upcoming events that we want to talk about that we need to be on the same page about. And then comes the main event where we spend most of the meeting, and that is on the issues list. Call it IDS. You identify, you discuss, and you solve the issue. And this is a heavy topic because it's something you have to have a level of trust and faith and courage to really get into these issues. And I think that's an important building block of any relationship, is that you have the structure in place and the trust to be able to talk about some of those key issues in a safe and healthy manner. In this environment, this level 10 meeting gives you that safe place to do just that. So some of those issues might be, as simple as, we need to figure out how to get Timmy to soccer practice this week. But some of the issues might be a little bigger. Like, I feel like we're not communicating enough, and I would like to improve upon that. So taking that as an example, when somebody brings that topic up, the way that that's brought up is you describe the issue in as simple of a way as you possibly can, with as clearly as you can. Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day-to-day. We get distracted. We face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self-doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey, which I just did. I feel like we're not communicating as much as we should, and I'd like to see how we can communicate more. And then you get into the discussion phase of that. You talk about it openly. And in talking about it openly, it doesn't mean accusing or judging or shaming or anything like that. What it means is questioning, getting curious about it. Why do you feel that way? What makes you feel that way? Is there anything that I can do? What does that communication look like to you? What does successful communication look like to you? The goal is to get to a solution that you can both feel good about and move forward with, and ultimately even turn into a to-do. And that to-do might be, let's focus on communication 3 times this week by having dinner together, or going out on at least one date this week. Putting those to-dos on the list actually makes you accountable to solving that issue. And so it's a really powerful framework for providing a safe and comfortable place for people to bring up those issues without just bringing them up at surprise times. A lot of times, and I know that this has happened in our own relationship, 2 things will happen with regard to communicating over key big issues. Either we will suppress them, we'll push them down and build an unhealthy resentment around it because we're just not getting our needs met, or we're not talking about something because it's never a good time to bring it up. Or we do bring it up at the wrong time and it starts a big fight or starts a big terrible discussion that doesn't end well, or ends with somebody sleeping on the couch, usually me. So this framework of having a level 10 meeting where you can openly discuss these issues in a safe way is really important. And it is really important to set some boundaries or ground rules around these meetings so that everybody understands that it is a safe place to bring this up. There's no shame involved. There's no judgment, but there is rigorous honesty to the extent that you want to get to the truth. Um, One element we like to focus on in this is the fact that there is basically a spectrum for where you get to artificial harmony on one side of it, which is that, that fake harmony that you try to maintain so that you can avoid all conflict at all costs whatsoever. And in that space of artificial harmony, you build resentment. You build like this um this passive aggressive nature, right? But everything's artificial. It's not real. It's not authentic. And on this, if you swing to the entirely other side of that spectrum, you have mean spiritedness, where you're openly just being mean and shameful and judgmental. And so within that, somewhere in the middle lies the truth, where if you can approach that in a healthy way and a very curious way, you can start to solve those issues and get closer, and really start to lean into the truth. So finding the truth requires curiosity, and that's what happens in that issues solving track, that issues solving section of that meeting. Um, Now, one important part about that issue solving track is that when you bring up issues, they don't just come up on the fly. You should have a list of issues that you have that you are ready to discuss, and make sure that everybody has access to those, or both people have access to those before you start talking about them. So that when you get to that point in the meeting, you can call out what issue you want to discuss and then focus on the first three first. This is kind of the framework of EOS, but it works well in the relationship structure as well. So focusing on that level 10, so that's one of the frameworks for a meeting that you could have every week. But if you decide, yeah, EOS, that's a little too cold for me, a little too structured, or a little bit too like businessy for me and my relationship, I would like to do it some other way. Well, then choose another method. There's probably a billion different ways that you could run those meetings each week. But my suggestion is choose one, because the best kind of communication happens when you can put yourself in an environment, a forum, where you can be open and honest and curious and get to solutions, work toward finding the honesty and the solution that both people can agree to. And again, if that's not working for you, I highly recommend looking for somebody professional who can help out with that process. So that's one part of it. Those weekly meetings are so important on getting us on the same page. And if you want to even take it further, what we also like to do is we like to incorporate another part of our vision and reflection, and on an annual basis. We like to get together right at the end of the year, right after Christmas, right before the new year. And we did this for the first time last year. And this is where we created our vision for ourselves, where we looked down the line at where we wanted to be in 10 years. We dreamed big together, and we talked about those things. And a lot of that came down to really determining and getting aligned with what are our collective family core values. What are our core values? And for us, it's faith, it's humor, it's love, and it's continuous growth. Those are the four core values that our family wants to lean into. And then when we have those core values, we can define all of what we want to become around what those values represent. And, in that instance, then we look at what our 10-year vision would be, what we want to achieve in 10 years. Where do we see ourselves? Where do we want to be together on that front? And then how are we going to get there? Now we're going to narrow that down to very similar to what would happen on the quarterly vision reflection retreat. This is where we narrow it down to what do we want to achieve in 3 years? Where do we want to be? And we can list out what our lives look like in 3 years. Again, this very closely follows that EOS kind of protocol that of what our 3-year plan really looks like, and what we want to achieve. And when we look at that 3-year target, one of the first questions that we do want to ask ourselves is, what are our priorities? Because if you don't have any priorities, or if you have too many priorities, you have no priorities. And that causes a rift. Like if you have a vision and no priorities, you're not going to be going anywhere, and you're going to be not be going anywhere fast. So it's important to know what your priorities are. And for us, when we defined our priorities, and my priorities in particular, or the priorities that we want to achieve in particular for the next few years, they are that we want to set our kids up to become sustainable and self-sustainable adults, that are able to function in the world effectively. And we want to better serve in a spiritual capacity, that we want to grow our spiritual nature in an important way. And we want to lean into our creative spirits so that we can, build on the things that lift us up. And those are really the priorities that we have in 3 years. And what does that look like in terms of what our financial picture looks like? What does your financial picture look like 3 years from now? What are the list of things that you've achieved within those 3 years? And then you narrow it down again to 1 year. What does that 1 year financial picture look like? What have you achieved this year? What are your goals this year that will take you closer to your long-term vision? And then you narrow them down even further into what do you want to achieve this quarter? And you discuss those and you get excited about those. And one of the great things that comes from this exercise is that you become fully aligned in where you want to go. Your communication is there, and those discussions even guide your weekly meetings that help you to move in the direction of where you want to go. And again, there's a lot of ways that you can frame this, but it's really important, I think, that at least on an annual basis, you come together and you get aligned on your values and your vision, and then you narrow that vision down into what the core to-dos and what your core goals are for the next quarter, and then hold each other accountable to them. Discuss them in your weekly meeting. Set up to-dos. Set up those priorities. And then most importantly, you do want to address the elephant in the room, the important questions, and most important, which is like the intimacy, like the intimacy that you have with your spouse. What is the state of being of where your intimacy is right now, and are you happy with that? Can it be improved upon? How can we improve upon that? Again, this is not a shaming or a judgmental exercise. It's a way to be honest and open and build that communication, because the more honest and open you could be in a loving way, in a way that serves the relationship as a whole, the stronger that relationship is going to be and the closer you're going to become. And you're going to find that if you can do that effectively, you will find that this relationship will be your dream relationship. Relationships do take work. And I know that the way that I've described this, and I've really had to condense a lot of this information down into like just the nutshell bits and pieces of this. But there's, more specific frameworks that I can go through at some point in time in the future to actually discuss what this looks like. And perhaps I'll bring my wife on an episode so we can talk through some of these elements in more detail. But I just want to get you that clear picture that even though this sounds like a little bit cold, having meetings and doing vision plannings and things like that, if you incorporate that into the vision of love that you have for your relationship, you can actually make this a very powerful and intimate thing. That moves, that brings your relationship closer and makes it stronger, and makes you become the power couple that you want to be, fully aligned and fully moving in the right direction. Relationships take work. They do. They really do, regardless of what relationships you are. There's no perfect relationship without work. In order to do that work, you have to set up a framework around it. And so I hope this simple framework around that helps. And yeah, I'll get some more detail about it at some point in the future. But until next time, thanks for joining me today. Hope this was helpful. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular, and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.